Blinking is a rapid, often unconscious movement of the eyelids that plays a vital role in maintaining eye health and visual clarity. While it serves an essential protective function, moisturizing the eyes and shielding them from harm, blinking also opens the door to deeper scientific, psychological, and philosophical questions. Why do we blink so frequently? What happens during a blink? And how does the brain maintain continuity despite the interruption? This exploration uncovers blinking as more than a reflex. It's a window into perception, emotion, and consciousness. Subscribe to continue exploring the unseen power of the blink and its surprising significance. During a blink, an intricate sequence of physiological and neurological processes unfolds in a fraction of a second, so seamlessly that we rarely notice it happening. Although it may seem like a simple, automatic action, blinking is a finely tuned coordination of muscles, nerves, and perception mechanisms that serve multiple essential functions. The average blink lasts between 100 to 400 milliseconds, less than half a second. Yet during that time, the body performs a series of vital maintenance tasks for the eyes, and the brain ensures that our visual world remains undisturbed. Blinking begins with the movement of the eyelid. The upper eyelid is the primary actor in this motion, driven downward by the contraction of the orbicularis oculi muscle. This circular muscle around the eye quickly shortens, causing the eyelid to descend and cover the cornea. Once the eyelid has fully closed, it then rapidly reopens due to the action of the levator palpebrae superioris muscle, which raises the eyelid back to its resting position. This process is so fast and fluid that we are typically unaware of any interruption in our visual experience. One of the most important functions of blinking is the even distribution of the tear film across the surface of the eye. The tear film is composed of 3 layers: a mucus layer closest to the cornea, an aqueous, watery layer in the middle, and an outer lipid, oil layer. Each blink helps to spread this tear film evenly, keeping the eye moist, nourished, and protected. This process not only hydrates the cornea but also flushes away tiny particles like dust and debris that may have settled on the surface of the eye. The action of blinking serves as a natural windshield wiper for the eye, ensuring that vision remains clear and unobstructed. The tear film also plays a role in preventing infection and maintaining the health of the eye's surface. It contains antimicrobial proteins like lysozyme and lactoferrin, which help to combat bacteria. When we blink, these protective substances are redistributed, renewing the eye's first line of defense against environmental threats. Moreover, blinking stimulates the meibomian glands located in the eyelids, which release oils that form the tear film's outer layer. This oily layer prevents the rapid evaporation of the tears and contributes to eye comfort. Muscle coordination during a blink is remarkably precise. Besides the orbicularis oculi and levator palpebrae superioris muscles, other muscles like the Muller's muscle, also known as the superior tarsal muscle, and small accessory muscles contribute to finer adjustments in eyelid movement and tension. The brain regulates blinking through a network involving the facial nerve, cranial nerve 7, which controls the orbicularis oculi, and the oculomotor nerve, cranial nerve 3, which innervates the levator palpebrae superioris. The initiation and modulation of blink reflexes involve areas in the brainstem, particularly the pons and midbrain. These areas communicate with higher cognitive centers, allowing blinking to be influenced by attention, emotional state, and environmental context. A less obvious but equally fascinating aspect of blinking is the brief visual blackout that occurs when the eyelid covers the eye. Logically, one would expect a blink to result in a series of dark interruptions in our visual field, similar to the shuttering of a camera lens. However, that is not what we experience. despite blinking 15 to 20 times per minute on average, potentially over 10,000 times a day. Our perception of the world remains smooth and continuous. This illusion of uninterrupted vision is made possible by neural mechanisms known as saccadic suppression and blink suppression. During a blink, the brain essentially erases the momentary loss of visual input from our conscious awareness. This phenomenon is partly achieved through predictive coding and memory-based reconstruction, where the brain fills in the missing data with information from before and after the blink. Specialized neurons in the visual cortex and other regions downregulate activity during the blink, filtering out the sudden change in light and motion that would otherwise be perceived as a disturbance. It is similar to what happens during rapid eye movements, or saccades, when the eyes shift from one point of focus to another. In both cases, the brain suppresses transient input to maintain visual stability. This capacity for visual continuity highlights the brain's remarkable ability to process fragmented sensory information as a seamless whole. In experimental settings, researchers have demonstrated that during a blink, visual sensitivity is reduced, even in the absence of actual eyelid closure. Functional MRI studies have shown that activity in the primary visual cortex and other areas drops momentarily during a blink, further supporting the theory that perceptual suppression is centrally controlled, not just a result of mechanical obstruction. The timescale of a blink varies slightly depending on individual factors and situational context. A spontaneous blink, occurring without conscious thought or external stimulus, typically lasts about 300 milliseconds. Reflex blinks, which are faster and triggered by sudden stimuli like bright lights or approaching objects, can be even shorter. Voluntary blinks, where a person intentionally closes their eyes, may last longer. Regardless of type, the blink reflex is one of the fastest movements the body can perform, comparable to reflex actions like coughing or sneezing. Although blinking might seem trivial, its frequency and timing are subtly influenced by a wide range of variables. Our blink rate increases when we are tired, stressed, or emotionally aroused. Conversely, it decreases when we are deeply focused or absorbed in a task, such as reading or staring at a screen. This reduction in blink rate during intense visual engagement can lead to dry eyes, discomfort, and digital eye strain, especially during prolonged computer use. Understanding the blink process in detail allows researchers and clinicians to develop better strategies for mitigating these effects, including reminders to blink, ergonomic adjustments, and use of artificial tears. The blink rate is also modulated by internal states such as cognitive load and mental effort. Studies have shown that people tend to blink more frequently at natural breakpoints during complex tasks, such as at the end of a sentence while reading or during pauses in conversation. This suggests that blinking may be strategically timed to occur when the demand on visual input is lower, further minimizing perceptual disruption. In other words, the brain doesn't just suppress awareness of blinks, it actively chooses the best moments to allow them to happen. Moreover, blinking has been shown to synchronize in group settings, especially during emotionally engaging storytelling or videos. This synchronization may indicate shared attention or emotional resonance, reinforcing the idea that blinking, while often unconscious, is tightly integrated with our cognitive and social functions. In essence, blinking is not merely an eye movement. It is a complex behavior that integrates motor control, sensory processing, environmental awareness, and even aspects of cognition. From the instant an eyelid begins its descent to the moment visual input is restored, an entire network of systems works in harmony to protect, refresh, and maintain our ability to see clearly. Simultaneously, the brain performs a quiet act of visual illusion, allowing us to navigate the world with a sense of visual continuity that defies the frequent blackouts happening before our eyes. Understanding what happens during a blink opens the door to broader insights into how the body maintains homeostasis with minimal disruption to perception. It also raises deeper questions about the nature of consciousness, attention, and reality itself. How much of what we experience is a reconstruction, a filling in of blanks, orchestrated by a brain striving to keep us seamlessly connected to the world around us? The simple blink, it turns out, is a profound window into both the biology of the body and the mysteries of the mind. The anatomy and physiology of blinking reveal a highly coordinated and sophisticated system that involves both muscular and neural components. While blinking appears as a simple and automatic action, its underlying mechanisms involve precise control by the nervous system, muscular execution, and constant regulation in response to internal and external stimuli. To understand blinking fully, one must explore the muscles responsible for eyelid movement, the nerves that innervate those muscles, the different types of blinks that occur, and how the brain governs blink rate through complex neurological pathways and chemical signals. At the heart of blinking is the movement of the upper and lower eyelids, controlled primarily by a few key muscles. The most important of these is the orbicularis oculi muscle, a circular band of muscle fibers that surrounds the eye. This muscle is responsible for closing the eyelids. When it contracts, the eyelid is drawn downward and inward, covering the cornea and protecting the eye. The orbicularis oculi is innervated by the facial nerve, also known as cranial nerve 7. This nerve carries motor signals from the brainstem to the facial muscles, enabling not only blinking but a range of facial expressions. The action of opening the eyelids is mainly controlled by the levator palpebrae superioris muscle. This muscle originates from the sphenoid bone within the orbit and inserts into the skin and tarsal plate of the upper eyelid. When it contracts, it lifts the upper eyelid back into its open position after a blink. The levator palpebrae superioris is innervated by the oculomotor nerve, cranial nerve 3, which is essential for many movements of the eye and eyelid. In addition to this, Muller's muscle, also called the superior tarsal muscle, plays a secondary role in eyelid elevation. This smooth muscle is under sympathetic control, and while it doesn't contribute much to voluntary eye opening, it does help maintain eyelid tone, especially in the state of alertness. Blinking relies on precise coordination between these muscles, and this coordination is under the tight control of the central nervous system. Signals originating from the brainstem regulate both voluntary and involuntary blinks. The brainstem, particularly the pons and the medulla oblongata, houses the motor nuclei of the facial nerve. Reflex blinks are mediated at this level, where incoming sensory information from the trigeminal nerve, cranial nerve V, can trigger a rapid, protective blink in response to sudden visual or tactile stimuli. These reflexes are some of the fastest muscular responses in the human body, often occurring within 200 milliseconds. There are three main types of blinks: spontaneous, reflex, and voluntary. Spontaneous blinks are those that occur without any external trigger or conscious effort. They are generated by central pattern generators in the brainstem, which produce rhythmic motor outputs that cause the eyelids to close at regular intervals. These blinks are crucial for maintaining the health and function of the eye, ensuring constant renewal of the tear film and preventing desiccation of the corneal surface. The frequency of spontaneous blinking can vary depending on a person's age, state of alertness, and emotional or cognitive state. On average, a healthy adult blinks around 15 to 20 times per minute, though this rate can drop dramatically during activities that require sustained visual attention, such as reading or using a computer. Reflex blinks, on the other hand, are triggered by external stimuli. These can include a sudden puff of air, a flash of bright light, or an approaching object that threatens the eye. Reflex blinking serves as a protective mechanism, helping to shield the eye from physical harm. The sensory signals responsible for initiating reflex blinks are primarily carried by the ophthalmic branch of the trigeminal nerve, which detects tactile and noxious stimuli at the corneal surface. These signals are then relayed to the brainstem, where they activate interneurons that rapidly stimulate the facial nerve and trigger a blink. The entire process is completed in less than a quarter of a second, providing near-instant protection. Voluntary blinks are consciously initiated and are under the control of the motor cortex, which sends descending signals through the corticobulbar tract to the facial motor nucleus in the brainstem. From there, the facial nerve carries the instructions to the orbicularis oculi muscle, resulting in eyelid closure. Voluntary blinking may serve various purposes, from communicating through nonverbal cues to consciously moisturizing the eyes or signaling attentiveness in a conversation. While the underlying motor pathway is similar to that of spontaneous and reflex blinks, the involvement of higher cortical centers distinguishes voluntary blinking as an intentional act. An important aspect of blinking physiology is the regulation of blink rate by the brain, which adjusts blinking frequency in response to physiological, cognitive, and emotional conditions. One of the key neurotransmitters involved in this regulation is dopamine, a chemical messenger associated with movement, motivation, and reward. Dopamine pathways in the basal ganglia, particularly the nigrostriatal pathway, play a significant role in modulating motor control, including blinking. Elevated dopamine activity is typically associated with increased blink rate, whereas diminished dopamine levels correspond to reduced blinking. This link between dopamine and blinking has been observed in various clinical conditions. For instance, patients with Parkinson's disease, which is characterized by a degeneration of dopamine-producing neurons in the substantia nigra, often exhibit a markedly reduced blink rate. Conversely, individuals with schizophrenia, who often have dysregulated dopamine systems, may exhibit a higher than normal blink rate. This relationship has led researchers to explore blink rate as a non-invasive biomarker for assessing dopamine function and even cognitive effort. In addition to dopamine, the regulation of blinking involves a network of brain areas including the frontal cortex, the supplementary motor area, and the anterior cingulate cortex. These regions integrate sensory input, motor planning, and attentional processes to determine when and how often to blink. During tasks that require high visual or cognitive engagement, the prefrontal cortex may inhibit the blink reflex to prevent interruption of visual input. However, once a cognitive break or a natural pause occurs, the blink rate often increases as the brain uses the opportunity to maintain ocular health and recalibrate sensory input. This dynamic regulation reveals blinking not merely as a repetitive motor act, but as a behavior intricately linked with attention, arousal, and mental workload. Studies have shown that during high-demand cognitive tasks, such as solving complex problems or navigating fast-paced environments, blink frequency often decreases. Once the task is completed or a break is taken, blink rate rebounds. This pattern suggests a functional adaptation, allowing for uninterrupted perception during important tasks while still ensuring regular maintenance of eye moisture and cleanliness during moments of relative rest. The anatomy and physiology of blinking are thus a blend of muscular precision and neurological sophistication. The muscles involved work in harmony to execute the blink itself, while the nerves ensure that this movement is timed perfectly to meet the body's needs. Reflex pathways allow for rapid protection, central pattern generators maintain essential maintenance, and higher brain regions fine-tune blink behavior based on context and cognitive demand. Blink rate, far from being a static feature, is a dynamic expression of the body's internal state and its interaction with the external world. Understanding these mechanisms not only sheds light on a fundamental human behavior, but also opens avenues for clinical and cognitive research. Blinking offers a window into the functioning of the brain, particularly the motor system, attention networks, and dopamine pathways. It also has implications for diagnosing neurological diseases, managing eye health, and even understanding social and psychological behavior. What seems like an unconscious, minor act is in fact a vital, regulated function that reflects the complexity of the human body and brain working together in perfect unison. Blinking is one of the most frequent and essential involuntary actions performed by the human body, yet it is often overlooked in terms of its significance. On average, a person blinks approximately 15 to 20 times per minute, which translates to nearly 20,000 times per day. Each blink lasts only a fraction of a second, and despite this constant interruption of visual input, our experience of the world remains fluid and continuous. This unassuming act serves a number of vital physiological and neurological functions that maintain ocular health, ensure clear vision, protect against environmental threats, and even contribute to cognitive and neural efficiency. One of the most critical roles of blinking is to maintain the hydration of the eyes. The surface of the eye, particularly the cornea, must remain moist to function properly. The cornea lacks blood vessels and relies entirely on the tear film for its nourishment, oxygen supply, and waste removal. The tear film itself is a complex three-layered structure composed of a mucus layer that adheres to the corneal surface, an aqueous layer that provides the bulk of the moisture and nutrients, and an outer lipid layer that prevents rapid evaporation. Each time we blink, this tear film is spread evenly across the eye's surface, ensuring that no area is left exposed or unprotected. Without this continuous replenishment, the corneal surface would quickly dry out, leading to discomfort, irritation, and in more severe cases, damage to the epithelial cells. In modern life, where people often spend extended periods focusing on digital screens, the importance of blinking for hydration becomes even more apparent. Screen usage has been shown to reduce blink frequency significantly. This reduction leads to increased evaporation of the tear film and can contribute to a condition known as digital eye strain or computer vision syndrome. Symptoms include dryness, burning, blurred vision, and headaches. To combat this, eye care professionals often recommend conscious blinking techniques, artificial tear drops, and the 20-20-20 rule. Every 20 minutes, look at something 20 feet away for 20 seconds. These strategies help restore the blink's natural frequency and allow the tear film to do its job in protecting and nourishing the eyes. In addition to hydrating the eyes, blinking serves a vital cleaning function. The human eye is constantly exposed to the external environment, which contains dust, pollen, smoke, microbes, and other tiny particles that can settle on the surface of the eye. The action of blinking acts like a windshield wiper, mechanically sweeping away these contaminants. The inner surface of the eyelids, along with the lashes, are lined with structures that help trap and remove foreign matter. During a blink, tears are also pumped across the eye and into the drainage ducts in the inner corners of the eyelids, effectively flushing out debris and transporting it away from the sensitive ocular surface. This cleansing process is supported by various glands located in and around the eyelids, including the meibomian glands, lacrimal glands, and goblet cells. The meibomian glands, which are embedded within the tarsal plates of the eyelids, secrete the lipid component of the tear film. This oil not only slows the evaporation of tears, but also helps to trap particles and direct them toward the tear drainage system. The lacrimal glands produce the watery component of tears and also contribute to antimicrobial defense by secreting substances like lysozyme, which breaks down bacterial cell walls. Goblet cells, located in the conjunctiva, release mucus that helps the tear film adhere uniformly to the corneal surface. All these components work in concert, activated and spread through the act of blinking, to cleanse and protect the eyes. Beyond hydration and cleaning, blinking is a crucial reflexive defense mechanism. The eyes are extremely vulnerable to injury due to their exposed location and delicate structure. Blinking serves as a primary line of defense against sudden threats. When an object approaches the eye rapidly, or when a gust of wind, bright flash of light, or puff of air is sensed, the eyelids close reflexively to protect the eye. This reflex is mediated through the trigeminal nerve, which senses the stimulus, and the facial nerve, which triggers the contraction of the orbicularis oculi muscle to rapidly close the eyelids. This entire process occurs within milliseconds, often before a person is even consciously aware of the threat. Reflexive blinking is not only fast, but highly sensitive. Even a slight touch to the eyelashes or a sudden movement in the peripheral visual field can trigger a blink. This sensitivity is part of the body's broader protective systems and is fine-tuned over time through both innate and learned mechanisms. For instance, individuals who have undergone eye surgery or suffered trauma to the eye may develop heightened blink reflexes as a compensatory behavior to safeguard their vision. On the other hand, in some neurological disorders, this reflex may be diminished or absent, which can increase the risk of injury and infection. Thus, the blink reflex is not merely a motor action, but a dynamic response shaped by the nervous system's ongoing assessment of environmental risk. An often overlooked function of blinking is its role in providing micro-rest periods for the brain and visual system. Although each blink is brief, the cumulative effect of thousands of these tiny pauses each day adds up to a significant amount of time during which visual input is momentarily suspended. This intermittent darkening of the visual field allows the brain to reset visual processing, briefly disengage from constant sensory input, and potentially reduce mental fatigue. In essence, blinking can be thought of as a built-in rest mechanism that gives the brain a split-second opportunity to reset and recalibrate. Neuroscientific studies using functional imaging and electrophysiological techniques have shown that brain activity patterns during blinking differ from those during constant visual input. During a blink, there is a brief deactivation of the visual cortex, followed by a rapid re-engagement once the eyes reopen. This suggests that blinking may serve to optimize attention and visual awareness, especially in environments with sustained or repetitive stimuli. This aligns with behavioral studies showing that blinking often coincides with natural cognitive boundaries. For example, at the end of a sentence while reading, during pauses in speech, or while switching tasks. These blink-associated breaks may help the brain process and integrate information more efficiently by segmenting continuous streams of sensory data into manageable chunks. Blinking may also influence emotional and psychological states. There is evidence that people tend to blink more frequently when they are under stress, anxious, or fatigued. Conversely, during moments of intense focus or concentration, such as solving a difficult problem or watching a suspenseful scene in a movie, blink rate tends to decrease. These shifts in blink frequency are thought to reflect the brain's prioritization of certain types of input and its attempts to optimize performance under varying cognitive loads. Therefore, blinking is not simply a response to ocular conditions, but also a reflection of internal mental states. In social and interpersonal contexts, blinking plays a subtle yet meaningful communicative role. The rate, duration, and timing of blinks can signal engagement, distraction, nervousness, or even deception. Observers often subconsciously interpret these signals and use them to adjust their responses during interactions. For instance, increased blink frequency may be interpreted as a sign of discomfort or dishonesty, whereas steady and synchronized blinking during conversation can indicate attentiveness and emotional alignment. These interpretations, though subtle, influence the flow and tone of human communication and suggest that blinking carries social significance beyond its physiological necessity. Overall, blinking is a multifaceted function that plays a critical role in maintaining ocular health, visual clarity, and cognitive balance. It hydrates the eye by evenly distributing the tear film, cleans the eye surface by flushing away debris and irritants, protects against injury through rapid reflex responses, and provides micro-rests that help the brain manage continuous visual input. In addition, blinking is influenced by emotional, cognitive, and social factors, making it a unique behavior that bridges the physical, neurological, and psychological domains. Though often unnoticed in daily life, the act of blinking is an elegant and indispensable component of human physiology that supports both our sensory experience and our overall well-being. The neurological control of blinking is a deeply intricate process involving a network of central and peripheral neural circuits, neuromodulators, and feedback systems that integrate sensory input with motor output. Although blinking may appear to be a simple mechanical act, it is underpinned by complex neurophysiological processes regulated by both the central and peripheral nervous systems. This coordination ensures that blinking occurs appropriately in response to a variety of internal and external cues. From the spontaneous maintenance of eye moisture to rapid reflexive blinks that protect the eye from harm, the regulation of blinking is a critical function that reflects broader neurological health and is sensitive to disorders of the brain and nervous system. At the core of blink control lies the integration of central and peripheral nervous system pathways. The central nervous system, particularly areas within the brainstem and basal ganglia, plays a vital role in generating and regulating spontaneous and reflexive blinks. In the brainstem, two cranial nerves are primarily responsible for the act of blinking: the facial nerve, cranial nerve 7, and the trigeminal nerve, cranial nerve V. The facial nerve innervates the orbicularis oculi muscle, which is responsible for eyelid closure. Its motor nucleus is located in the pons and receives descending input from cortical areas and other brainstem regions. The trigeminal nerve is the major sensory nerve of the face and transmits information from the cornea and surrounding facial skin. When the cornea is irritated or senses a sudden touch, the sensory information is sent through the ophthalmic branch of the trigeminal nerve to the spinal trigeminal nucleus. Interneurons then connect to the facial motor nucleus, triggering a rapid protective blink. This reflex arc, known as the corneal reflex, is one of the fastest and most reliable neural reflexes in the human body, and it illustrates the collaboration between sensory and motor pathways in blink regulation. Higher-order brain regions also contribute to the control of blinking. The basal ganglia, a group of subcortical nuclei involved in motor control, habit formation, and reward processing, are essential for modulating spontaneous blink rate. Within the basal ganglia, the striatum receives dopaminergic input from the substantia nigra pars compacta, and this dopaminergic modulation is particularly important for regulating the frequency of spontaneous blinks. Dopamine, a critical neurotransmitter involved in motivation, movement, and reward, exerts a profound influence on blink behavior. Increased dopaminergic activity is generally associated with a higher blink rate, while reduced dopamine levels correlate with diminished blinking. This relationship between dopamine and blink rate has been used in both clinical and research contexts to assess dopaminergic function. For instance, dopamine agonists and stimulants such as L-DOPA or amphetamines tend to increase blink frequency. Conversely, dopamine antagonists, often used as antipsychotic medications, can reduce blink rate. Researchers have proposed that spontaneous blink rate could serve as a non-invasive proxy for central dopaminergic activity, although this relationship is complex and influenced by other factors such as attention, fatigue, and psychological state. The involvement of dopamine in blink regulation becomes especially evident in the context of neurological diseases that affect dopaminergic systems. Parkinson's disease, a neurodegenerative disorder characterized by the progressive loss of dopamine-producing neurons in the substantia nigra, provides a striking example. One of the early and noticeable symptoms of Parkinson's disease is a markedly reduced blink rate, often accompanied by a characteristic facial masking or reduced facial expressiveness. Patients may blink only a few times per minute, leading to dry eyes, irritation, and a higher risk of corneal damage. This reduced blinking reflects the impaired dopaminergic function in the basal ganglia and is often used as a clinical observation to support diagnosis. The effect of Parkinson's disease on blinking also illustrates the broader motor deficits associated with the disorder. Blinking, like other automatic movements such as arm swinging during walking, becomes bradykinetic, slowed, and less frequent. Interestingly, blink rate can be partially restored with dopaminergic therapy, suggesting that it is sensitive to dopamine levels and potentially useful as a marker for monitoring treatment efficacy. Studies have also found that blink suppression, or the ability to voluntarily inhibit blinking, is impaired in Parkinson's disease, which reflects a breakdown in the executive control of motor functions. This further underscores the role of cortical basal ganglia circuits in the fine-tuned regulation of blink behavior. In contrast to Parkinson's disease, which is associated with reduced blink rate, certain psychiatric and neurodevelopmental conditions, such as schizophrenia, often involve an increase in blink frequency. Schizophrenia is a complex disorder that involves disruptions in thought, perception, and emotion, and is widely believed to involve dysregulation of dopamine pathways. Elevated blink rate in schizophrenia is thought to reflect increased dopaminergic activity, particularly in mesolimbic pathways, which are implicated in the positive symptoms of the disorder, such as hallucinations and delusions. Studies have demonstrated that unmedicated patients with schizophrenia often exhibit significantly higher blink rates than healthy controls. When treated with antipsychotic medications that block dopamine receptors, their blink rates tend to normalize, supporting the theory that dopamine plays a pivotal role in modulating this behavior. Blinking abnormalities have also been observed in other neurological and psychiatric conditions. Tourette's syndrome, a disorder characterized by involuntary tics and vocalizations, may involve excessive blinking as a form of motor tic. This repetitive blinking can be intrusive and is thought to arise from dysfunction in cortical striatal thalamic cortical circuits. In patients with blepharospasm, a focal dystonia affecting the eyelid muscles, blinking becomes excessive and forceful due to abnormal neural activity in the basal ganglia and brainstem. These patients may experience discomfort, visual disturbances, and even temporary blindness due to sustained eyelid closure. Treatment options such as botulinum toxin injections or deep brain stimulation aim to modulate the abnormal neural signals and restore more natural blinking patterns. The role of cognitive and emotional states in influencing blink behavior also ties into neurological control. Attention, concentration, and fatigue all affect blink rate through top-down modulation from the frontal cortex. When individuals are highly focused on a visual task, such as reading or watching a screen, they tend to blink less frequently. This is thought to be mediated by increased activity in the prefrontal cortex, which exerts inhibitory control over motor areas responsible for blinking. Once the task ends or the cognitive load decreases, the brain allows a rebound increase in blinking to compensate for the previous suppression and restore ocular moisture and comfort. This dynamic regulation reflects the brain's ability to prioritize competing demands and maintain sensory and motor balance. Stress and anxiety can also influence blinking via activation of the autonomic nervous system. Sympathetic arousal tends to increase blink rate as part of a generalized heightened physiological state. The locus coeruleus, a brainstem nucleus involved in arousal and stress responses, may contribute to this effect by modulating both cortical and brainstem activity. In social contexts, increased blinking may serve as a nonverbal signal of discomfort, nervousness, or deception. These patterns are learned and reinforced through experience and social feedback, highlighting the integration of neurological control with behavioral and psychological functions. In summary, the neurological control of blinking is a complex interplay between peripheral reflex circuits, central pattern generators, dopamine energic modulation, and cognitive influence. The peripheral nervous system ensures that reflexive blinks occur rapidly in response to threats, while the central nervous system maintains a baseline of spontaneous blinking and modulates this rate based on internal and external demands. Dopamine plays a key role in regulating blink frequency and is implicated in both normal variation and disease-related abnormalities. Conditions such as Parkinson's disease, schizophrenia, Tourette's syndrome, and blepharospasm all reveal the sensitivity of blink behavior to neurological dysfunction. Moreover, the adaptability of blink rate to cognitive load, attention, and emotional state underscores its role as a behavioral marker of neural activity. Understanding the neurological foundations of blinking not only enriches our appreciation of this fundamental behavior, but also offers valuable insights into broader brain functions and dysfunctions. Blinking, at first glance, appears to be a purely mechanical process, a simple flick of the eyelids designed to protect and lubricate the eyes. However, this involuntary behavior is intimately connected to cognitive processes. Far beyond its physiological role, blinking reflects, responds to, and even supports cognitive functions in complex ways. When viewed through the lens of neuroscience and psychology, blinking becomes a subtle but informative indicator of how our minds are working. It can reveal how hard we're thinking, how engaged we are, where our attention lies, and even how we interact socially. Rather than just being a passive eye reflex, blinking actively participates in the rhythms of mental life. Researchers have found that blink rate can fluctuate significantly based on cognitive load. When a person is engaged in a mentally demanding task, such as solving a challenging problem or deeply concentrating, their blink rate tends to decrease. This reduction helps maintain a stable visual input, minimizing interruptions while the brain focuses intensely on processing information. For instance, people blink far less while reading dense text or performing detailed visual tasks such as threading a needle or coding. In contrast, during moments of rest or low cognitive engagement, blink rate increases as the visual system requires fewer resources and the need for continuous input diminishes. This connection between blink rate and mental workload has been supported by eye tracking and EEG studies that show synchronous changes in blink behavior and brainwave patterns. The more cognitively demanding the task, the more we unconsciously suppress blinking, almost as if we're afraid of missing something important during those fleeting milliseconds of darkness. This blink modulation can also function as a self-regulating mechanism for managing attention. Just as a pause in a conversation signals a shift in topic or tone, a blink can function as a punctuation mark in mental activity. It may signify a natural break or boundary in information processing, a micro moment where the brain resets, files away what was just perceived, and prepares for the next chunk of data. This theory is supported by observations that people tend to blink at decision points while reading, such as at the end of a sentence, paragraph, or section. These moments represent cognitive transitions, and the blink seems to act in harmony with these shifts, allowing the brain to momentarily recalibrate. Some researchers have even suggested that these blinks are not just passive markers, but active participants in organizing cognition, providing mental refreshes that help sustain prolonged concentration and problem solving. Another fascinating area of study involves the synchronization of blinking during social interactions. When individuals engage in meaningful conversation or storytelling, their blink patterns often become subtly aligned. This phenomenon is thought to reflect shared attention and cognitive resonance. For instance, during a conversation, listeners are more likely to blink at the same moments, usually at natural pauses in speech, at the end of a sentence, or when the speaker finishes a thought. These synchronized blinks suggest that both speaker and listener are tracking the rhythm of communication together, using blinks as invisible cues to maintain mutual understanding and timing. In group settings or during emotionally engaging experiences like watching a film or live performance, synchronized blinking has been observed among audience members. It's as if blinking serves as a quiet, subconscious signal that we are in sync with others emotionally and cognitively. This synchronization is not just about empathy or mirroring. It's also about shared processing. When people are equally engaged in the same narrative or experience, their brains process information in similar ways, and blinking synchronizes as a reflection of this shared cognitive activity. In this context, blinking is a subtle form of social bonding, allowing individuals to remain mentally attuned without saying a word. It becomes a nonverbal indicator of group cohesion and collective focus. In one study, even when people watched the same video separately, their blink patterns aligned at key narrative moments, such as transitions in plot or character shifts. This supports the idea that blinking is sensitive to content structure and meaning, not just individual physiology. Beyond social interactions, blinking patterns are also a useful tool in assessing how deeply someone is concentrating. In today's screen-saturated world, digital devices have changed the way we use our eyes and how often we blink. Multiple studies have shown that when individuals are working on a computer, tablet, or smartphone, their blink rate drops significantly compared to when they are resting or engaging in face-to-face conversation. This reduced blinking during screen use is a result of prolonged visual focus and high cognitive engagement. Unfortunately, the consequence of this behavior is often discomfort, eye dryness, or digital eye strain. In these cases, the mind's demand for attention is so great that the body temporarily overrides the eye's natural maintenance behavior. Ironically, the very act of intense concentration compromises ocular health, leading to the need for artificial tears or frequent breaks. Despite being automatic, blinking is not entirely out of our control. We can voluntarily suppress it for short periods or increase it intentionally. This voluntary control, however, becomes difficult to sustain during cognitive tasks. The brain's intrinsic need for attention and processing often overrides the effort to consciously regulate blinking. For example, during a memory test, participants may start with the intention to blink less or more, but as the task becomes more difficult, their blinking behavior reverts to patterns driven by cognitive demand rather than conscious choice. This dynamic interaction between voluntary and involuntary blinking again highlights how deeply cognition and physiology are intertwined. Interestingly, there is also evidence that blink rate may be linked to broader psychological traits and cognitive styles. Some studies have associated higher blink rates with increased creativity and divergent thinking, suggesting that people who blink more frequently might also be more likely to explore multiple ideas or switch between thoughts rapidly. Conversely, lower blink rates have been observed in people who are highly focused or methodical in their problem-solving approach. While these findings are still under investigation and not universally agreed upon, they hint at the possibility that blinking patterns could reveal aspects of personality or cognitive preference. Moreover, in clinical settings, blink rate has been explored as a biomarker for mental and neurological conditions. Reduced blinking is a well-known symptom of Parkinson's disease, which is linked to diminished dopamine activity. Similarly, increased blinking has been observed in individuals experiencing anxiety or stress, potentially as a physical manifestation of heightened arousal. These clinical correlations further underscore blinking's relevance as more than just an eye movement. It is a bodily behavior that reflects internal mental states, which means it can be used not only for diagnosis, but also for monitoring treatment outcomes or cognitive function over time. Ultimately, blinking and cognition are inextricably connected. A blink is not just a closing of the eyes. It is a silent messenger of the brain's current state. Whether indicating a shift in thought, marking a decision point, or syncing with another person in conversation, each blink is packed with information. It is part of the rhythm of thinking, the pause between ideas, and the punctuation in our visual and mental narratives. It keeps the eyes moist and healthy, yes, but it also helps structure our experience of the world in ways we are only beginning to understand. This connection becomes even more fascinating when we consider how little we consciously notice it. Blinking is happening constantly in the background, responding to our thoughts, feelings, and focus without any deliberate effort. In that sense, blinking exemplifies the hidden intelligence of the body, those minute, automatic behaviors that not only maintain physical health, but also mirror the complex workings of the mind. As research continues to uncover the links between blinking and cognition, we may come to view this simple reflex as a window into the brain's most intimate processes, offering clues about attention, emotion, and the ever-changing flow of thought. Blinking is often considered a mundane and automatic physical action, so common and unconscious that most people rarely think about it unless their eyes are dry or irritated. But beneath its surface simplicity lies a rich psychological world. The blink is not merely a reflex that moistens the eyes. It is also a subtle, expressive, and revealing behavior that interacts deeply with our emotional, cognitive, and psychological lives. Psychologists and neuroscientists have increasingly studied blinking as a behavioral signal that may provide insight into a person's emotional state, cognitive processing, and even aspects of personality. The blink is not just a mechanical act. It is also an expressive one, woven into the rhythms of thinking and feeling. One of the most prominent psychological connections to blinking is emotional expression. The rate and pattern of blinking can vary significantly depending on a person's emotional state. Under conditions of stress, anxiety, or emotional discomfort, people tend to blink more frequently. This increase is often involuntary and can be subtle, but it is consistently observed in psychological and physiological research. In high-stakes situations, like public speaking, test-taking, or experiencing social pressure, the blink rate tends to rise. The reasons for this are multifaceted. Elevated blink rate under stress is partly a physiological response, mediated by the autonomic nervous system, which becomes more active during moments of anxiety. Increased sympathetic arousal may lead to more frequent blinking as a result of heightened activity in facial muscles, increased vigilance, and even a subconscious attempt to block out overwhelming stimuli, if only for milliseconds at a time. This physiological reaction, however, has strong psychological implications. In scenarios where people are under observation or being evaluated, such as job interviews, negotiations, or interrogations, increased blinking can be a giveaway. Observers and psychologists have long noted that individuals who are nervous, dishonest, or attempting to hide information may blink more rapidly. This association has fueled the popular belief that blinking is a tell for deception, although this should be interpreted with caution. While it is true that blink rate may increase when someone is lying due to the stress or guilt they may be feeling, blinking alone is not a reliable lie detector. Some people naturally blink more than others, and context plays a significant role. Still, when combined with other nonverbal cues like gaze aversion, pupil dilation, facial tension, or voice changes, increased blinking can provide an informative piece of the psychological puzzle. In high-stakes environments such as poker games or courtroom testimonies, professional observers often pay close attention to blink behavior as part of broader nonverbal communication analysis. In poker, for instance, a sudden change in blink rate, either an increase or an unusual suppression, can signal emotional shifts that might give clues about a player's confidence or discomfort with their hand. Similarly, in interrogation settings or psychological interviews, therapists and investigators may watch for inconsistent or excessive blinking as part of their behavioral assessment. These interpretations are always probabilistic and must be cross-referenced with other indicators, but they highlight the extent to which blinking serves as a psychological signal. Beyond temporary emotional states, blinking has also been explored as a potential window into enduring personality traits. Though the research is still developing and not without debate, several studies have suggested that baseline blink rate may correlate with certain personality dimensions. For example, a higher spontaneous blink rate has been associated with increased dopamine activity in the brain, a neurotransmitter linked with reward sensitivity, novelty-seeking behavior, and motivation. These biological links have led to speculation that people who blink more often may also be more open to new experiences, more impulsive, or more extrovert. This makes sense when considering dopamine's role in approach behavior and emotional responsiveness. Individuals with higher dopamine levels may process stimuli more dynamically, leading to both more cognitive engagement and higher blink rates. Conversely, a lower blink rate may be associated with traits such as introversion, low novelty seeking, or high conscientiousness. People who blink less frequently may be more focused, cautious, and deliberate in their thought processes. They may spend longer intervals concentrating on specific stimuli without interruption, which is consistent with lower blink rates observed during tasks requiring sustained attention or deep analytical thinking. Of course, it is important to avoid overgeneralizing these tendencies, as blink rate is influenced by many factors, including environmental context, fatigue, medication, and individual baseline physiology. Nonetheless, the fact that blink behavior may correlate with broader personality traits opens a fascinating avenue for non-invasive behavioral analysis. Another psychological dimension of blinking involves its connection to social cognition and empathy. During interpersonal interactions, blinking can reflect and reinforce social bonds. Subtle mimicry or synchronization of blink patterns between conversational partners may signal shared understanding or emotional alignment. While this is often unconscious, it contributes to a sense of rapport and mutual attunement. In some cases, a mismatch in blink timing, such as one person blinking rapidly while the other rarely blinks, can create a subtle feeling of disconnection or tension. These microbehaviors are not always consciously noticed, but they influence how people feel about the interaction. As a result, blinking becomes part of this social grammar of nonverbal communication, subtly shaping the emotional atmosphere of conversations. Psychologists studying disorders of emotion and cognition have also investigated blink behavior as a potential diagnostic tool. For example, individuals with schizophrenia may exhibit irregular blink patterns, such as excessive or erratic blinking, especially during periods of hallucination or delusional thinking. These patterns may reflect disruptions in attention, arousal, or neurochemical balance. Similarly, people with major depressive disorder often show reduced blink rates, which may correspond with a general slowing of cognitive and physical activity. The use of blink monitoring in clinical settings is not yet standard practice, but it is gaining interest as a potential nonverbal measure of internal states, especially in populations that may have difficulty articulating their thoughts or emotions verbally. Moreover, there is an intriguing relationship between blinking and mental fatigue. As individuals become tired, particularly from cognitive effort, their blink rate tends to rise. This increase in blinking may be part of the brain's attempt to conserve energy or momentarily disengage from the task at hand. In this context, blinking becomes a behavioral indicator of cognitive depletion. Psychologists studying vigilance and performance in high-demand professions, such as air traffic control, surgery, or long-distance driving, have examined blink rate as a real-time measure of mental alertness. A sudden increase in blink rate may suggest that the operator is becoming fatigued and may require a break to maintain performance and safety. These findings have practical implications for designing work environments, schedules, and monitoring systems that take into account the psychological needs of individuals under sustained cognitive load. The unconscious nature of blinking makes it a particularly interesting behavior for psychological analysis. Because we do not usually control or notice our own blinking, it can serve as an honest signal, a behavioral clue that slips past our usual filters. This has made it a valuable tool in psychological experiments where researchers want to observe authentic reactions without alerting participants to what is being measured. In studies of attention, memory, emotional processing, and decision-making, blinking provides a window into the ebb and flow of mental engagement. For instance, during emotionally charged scenes in a film, viewers often exhibit prolonged periods without blinking, followed by rapid blinking once the tension eases. These blink patterns map closely onto emotional arousal and cognitive absorption, providing insights into how people experience stories, stress, and interpersonal drama. Even in meditation and mindfulness practices, blinking takes on psychological significance. Experienced meditators often blink less frequently during practice, reflecting a calm, focused mind with minimal cognitive chatter. Conversely, beginners or individuals practicing under stress may blink more often as their attention wavers. In this setting, blink rate becomes a measure of present moment awareness and mental stillness. Some traditions even train practitioners to maintain a steady gaze with minimal blinking, using it as a discipline to cultivate mental clarity and self-regulation. While modern science does not necessarily endorse the spiritual interpretations of blinking, it does recognize the behavioral patterns as meaningful indicators of mental state. In summary, blinking is far more than a physiological necessity. It is a psychological mirror. It reflects our moment-to-moment emotional states, our underlying personality traits, and the ebb and flow of cognitive effort. It serves as a signal in social interactions, a marker of mental fatigue, and even a potential clinical tool for understanding disorders of the mind. Though it typically escapes conscious awareness, blinking carries a wealth of psychological information that researchers and clinicians are only beginning to fully appreciate. As we continue to explore the hidden dimensions of this tiny act, we uncover a deeper understanding of the mind-body connection and the quiet ways in which our inner world makes itself known. In every moment of our waking lives, we blink, usually without noticing, often without meaning to. This small, rapid closure of the eyelids happens around 15 to 20 times a minute, amounting to tens of thousands of blinks per day. Each blink momentarily cuts off visual input, creating brief windows of darkness and sensory disruption. And yet, We do not perceive the world as flickering or broken. We experience life as a seamless, continuous stream. This unnoticed interruption invites a deeply philosophical exploration. Blinking, in its quiet regularity, challenges our assumptions about perception, consciousness, agency, and the construction of reality itself. In each blink lies a question: what is lost? What is filled in? And what does this say about the way we experience existence? When we blink, our eyes are closed for approximately 1/10 to 4/10 of a second. In purely biological terms, this is a mechanism for moistening the cornea, clearing debris, and maintaining ocular health. But from a philosophical perspective, each blink is a small moment of unconsciousness and absence in perception. These micro-moments go unnoticed not because they are insignificant, but because the brain actively conceals them. Through complex neural processes like saccadic suppression and perceptual continuity, the mind edits out the blankness and replaces it with stability. We are not aware of the darkness, nor do we register a disruption. This gives rise to a profound question. If reality can be interrupted and the interruption entirely erased from conscious awareness, what does this say about the authenticity of our experience? In this sense, blinking serves as a metaphor for the fragility of perception. Our minds do not record the world in a literal, continuous stream. Instead, they construct a version of reality based on selected inputs, assumptions, and patterns. Every blink is a moment that we never truly see, yet we assume we saw it. The brain's filling-in mechanisms are so efficient that we trust the illusion they create. This challenges the notion of experience as direct or unmediated. We think we are witnessing life as it happens, but we are, in fact, inhabiting a simulated continuity crafted by the brain. Blinking exposes the constructed nature of reality, showing how much of what we perceive is actually inferred. This leads us to confront deeper questions about time and consciousness. Do we experience the world as a flowing river, or are we merely piecing together a series of moments? Each blink is like a comma in the sentence of awareness, an interruption that does not disrupt the grammar but nonetheless divides experience into fragments. If we consider blinking as a kind of temporal punctuation, then our perception might be more like a film reel than a single unbroken take. Just as movies are made of still frames projected quickly enough to create the illusion of motion, our experience may be a series of snapshots, stitched together by the mind into a smooth narrative. This idea resonates with ancient philosophical inquiries about the nature of time. The pre-Socratic philosopher Zeno, for instance, questioned whether motion was continuous or made up of indivisible points. In modern philosophy, thinkers like Henri Bergson have drawn a distinction between mechanical time, quantifiable, divisible, and lived time, fluid, qualitative. Blinking occupies a strange place between these two. On the one hand, it can be measured. Each blink takes a fraction of a second. On the other hand, it passes without being felt, blurring the boundary between duration and interruption. The brain's ability to erase the awareness of blinking means that, subjectively, these moments do not count as time at all. They are anti-time, slices of life that disappear from conscious memory, like seconds lost in sleep. Indeed, blinking has often been compared to a miniature form of sleep. Just as sleep suspends our engagement with the world, blinking briefly detaches us from the sensory stream. In both cases, there is a loss of control and a withdrawal from outward perception. And in both cases, the mind continues to operate beneath the surface. When we blink, we are not fully conscious in the active sense. We surrender, for just a heartbeat, to the unconscious rhythms of the body. This surrender raises questions about agency. Most of our blinks are involuntary. They occur without our awareness, and yet they shape the totality of our sensory experience. How much of what we call consciousness is actually driven by unconscious mechanisms? If something as fundamental as vision is routinely interrupted and reconstructed without our knowledge, can we claim to have stable access to reality at all? This tension between conscious control and unconscious behavior runs through the philosophy of mind. Thinkers such as Descartes have posited a dualism between the mind and body, suggesting that reason and awareness govern the self. But blinking shows that many functions critical to the integrity of perception happen automatically. The conscious self, it seems, is not the master of all that occurs in experience. Rather, it is more like a witness, riding the waves of processes it does not fully control. This challenges the assumption that we are fully present in each moment. In truth, many moments, perhaps most, pass without full conscious engagement. And yet, these are the very moments that shape our reality. Meditation practices offer another perspective on the philosophy of blinking. In many contemplative traditions, practitioners are taught to observe the breath, the body, or the flicker of thought with heightened awareness. In doing so, they may also become aware of blinking itself, normally hidden from consciousness. For some, this awareness becomes a point of concentration, revealing just how active the mind is even when the body appears still. In Zen meditation, for instance, the emphasis on present moment attention reveals the discontinuities of experience. The meditator may notice a blink and feel the sudden absence it creates. That absence becomes a space for reflection. Just as a pause in music gives meaning to the notes, the blink may be seen as a silence in the flow of perception, a reset that allows consciousness to reassemble itself. These mental resets suggest that blinking may serve a psychological as well as a physiological function. Beyond cleaning the eye and protecting the cornea, a blink may act as a moment of mental punctuation. It allows the mind to digest what has just occurred, to shift attention, or to release tension. In this view, blinking is not an obstacle to perception, but part of its architecture. The very interruptions allow for the coherence of experience. Without blinks, perhaps perception would become overloaded, lacking the breaks that allow integration. This parallels how rest is necessary for focus, or how silence is necessary for speech to have meaning. The blink becomes a philosophical symbol of the interplay between presence and absence, fullness and emptiness. Moreover, the involuntary nature of blinking invites reflection on free will. If such a frequent and integral part of perception occurs without conscious intent, what does this say about our sense of autonomy? Blinking reminds us that much of what we consider our conscious life is scaffolded by unconscious routines. We may believe we are continuously experiencing the world, but in truth, our awareness is discontinuous, threaded together by the silent work of the brain. The illusion of continuity is a construction, not a given. This does not diminish the authenticity of experience, but adds depth to it. It shows that our consciousness is not a spotlight, but a tapestry, woven from threads both seen and unseen. In many ways, blinking echoes the nature of human memory. Just as we do not remember every blink, we do not remember every moment. Our lives are marked by gaps, forgotten hours, missed details, unregistered impressions. And yet, these gaps do not destroy the narrative of the self. Instead, they are part of its structure. Just as a novel is shaped not only by the words on the page, but also by the white space between them, our identity is shaped by what we experience and by what slips through unnoticed. Blinking, then, becomes a metaphor for the selective nature of attention, the impermanence of now, and the constructed essence of memory. In the grand philosophical tradition, blinking invites us to ask what it means to be present. If presence includes countless moments we do not perceive, moments when the world literally goes dark, then presence must be more than perception. It must include continuity despite interruption, awareness despite absence. Blinking shows that being conscious is not about seeing every frame, but about trusting the thread that holds the frames together. That trust is what allows us to move through the world with a sense of coherence, despite the countless invisible breaks in the film of reality. Ultimately, the philosophy of blinking touches on some of the deepest questions in human thought. What does it mean to see? What does it mean to be aware? How much of our experience is real, and how much is inferred? Blinking reminds us that life is not a single, seamless view, but a collage of seen and unseen moments, woven together by a mind that is both remarkably intelligent and profoundly mysterious. It is in the blink, in that tiny, lost moment, that we glimpse the paradox of consciousness, always present, yet constantly interrupted, always active, yet largely unconscious, always building meaning, even in the darkness. Blinking, often overlooked as a mundane physiological reflex, plays a significant role in the subtle world of nonverbal communication. As we engage in conversations, negotiate meaning, or silently respond to others, blinking becomes a micro-expression of our mental state, social intention, and emotional regulation. Though we might consider facial expressions, body posture, and tone of voice as the primary conveyors of unspoken communication, blinking, through its rate, rhythm, and synchronicity, adds another layer of complexity to the silent dialogue between people. It operates beneath conscious awareness, but contributes meaningfully to how we perceive and are perceived by others in interpersonal contexts. Blinking patterns shift depending on emotional and cognitive load. For instance, an increase in blink rate often accompanies stress, anxiety, or deception, while a decrease may indicate deep concentration or focused listening. This variability gives blinking communicative power, signaling to others what might be going on beneath the surface. During conversation, when someone blinks more rapidly, it can subtly communicate discomfort, impatience, or cognitive strain. Alternatively, steady, measured blinking during a conversation might indicate a relaxed and attentive listener. These microbehaviors are not usually interpreted in isolation, but when coupled with facial expression, gaze, and verbal cues, they reinforce or contradict what is being said. One of the most studied aspects of blinking in communication is its role in the detection of deception. Research in psychology and behavioral science has long examined how liars might behave differently from truth-tellers, and blinking has emerged as a variable of interest. Some studies suggest that people tend to blink less while telling a lie, possibly due to the cognitive load of constructing a falsehood, and then blink more rapidly afterward as they recover from the effort. This post-deception blink spike has been interpreted as a potential signal of deception. However, as with all behavioral indicators, blinking alone is not definitive. While changes in blink rate can be informative, they must be interpreted in context, accounting for the individual's baseline behavior, emotional state, and cultural background. Blinking can also serve as a subtle cue in active listening. When two people are engaged in a meaningful conversation, the listener's blink timing can signal attentiveness and emotional engagement. For instance, well-timed blinking that matches the speaker's pauses can show alignment and understanding, much like nodding or leaning forward. In contrast, erratic or overly frequent blinking might be perceived as a lack of interest, nervousness, or even disagreement. Skilled communicators often pick up on these micro-cues, consciously or not, and adjust their communication accordingly. Public speakers, teachers, and interviewers may interpret their audience's blinking patterns to gauge interest and receptiveness, while conversational partners use blinking as part of a rich, nonverbal feedback loop. Cultural variations also shape the interpretation of blinking. In some cultures, eye behavior is heavily codified and tied to notions of respect, sincerity, and attentiveness. In certain East Asian cultures, for example, direct eye contact is less emphasized than in Western contexts, and thus the role of blinking might be more subdued or interpreted differently. A lowered gaze and infrequent blinking may be seen as respectful and thoughtful, whereas in a Western context the same behavior could be misread as evasive or disengaged. In cultures where expressive eye contact is valued, blinking, especially when excessive or oddly timed, might be more likely to draw attention or be interpreted negatively. These cross-cultural differences underscore the importance of understanding the norms and expectations that shape nonverbal behavior in any social setting. Beyond deception and attentiveness, blinking also plays a role in regulating turn-taking and pacing in conversation. Much like other nonverbal signals, blinking can help manage the rhythm of interaction. A deliberate blink at the end of a spoken sentence, especially when combined with eye movement or a head nod, might serve as a cue that the speaker is yielding the floor or inviting a response. Conversely, a sudden increase in blinking during someone else's speech might signal impatience or a desire to interject. These cues are often very subtle and not consciously interpreted, yet they contribute to the overall flow and effectiveness of communication. In group settings, such as meetings or collaborative tasks, shared blink timing and mutual awareness can enhance social cohesion, facilitating smoother transitions and more harmonious dialogue. Another fascinating aspect of blinking in communication is its potential synchrony with others. Research has shown that in close social interactions, such as between friends, romantic partners, or in emotionally attuned conversations, people may unconsciously synchronize their blinking patterns. This phenomenon, sometimes called blink entrainment, reflects an underlying social connection. Just as people may mirror each other's body language or speech rhythms, they may also align their blinking without realizing it. This synchrony can enhance feelings of rapport, mutual understanding, and emotional resonance. When such synchrony is absent, say, in strained or distant conversations, the mismatch in blink rhythm can contribute to feelings of awkwardness or disconnect. In digital communication and artificial intelligence, awareness of blinking has also begun to influence design. With the rise of video conferencing and virtual avatars, the lack of natural blinking can create discomfort or unease, a phenomenon known as the uncanny valley. When avatars or robots fail to blink in a human-like manner, they appear lifeless or unsettling, even if other features are realistic. This recognition has led designers to incorporate realistic blink patterns into digital characters, understanding that blinking contributes not only to realism, but also to perceived empathy and trustworthiness. Just as we judge the authenticity of a human face partly through its spontaneous and believable blinking, we extend the same criteria to virtual beings, indicating how deeply embedded blink behavior is in our social perception. In contexts that require high levels of trust, such as therapy, law enforcement, or caregiving, blinking can serve as a subtle barometer of relational dynamics. A therapist, for instance, might notice changes in a client's blink rate as indicators of emotional arousal, discomfort, or insight. A sudden decrease in blinking could accompany moments of deep reflection or vulnerability, while increased blinking might occur as the client nears an emotionally charged topic. These observations, while not conclusive on their own, provide important cues for attunement and pacing. Similarly, in legal interviews or high-stakes negotiations, trained observers may use blinking, among other nonverbal behaviors, to assess sincerity and emotional states. Even in parenting, attentive caregivers often interpret their children's eye and blink behavior as part of understanding their needs, emotions, and focus. The communicative function of blinking also extends to expressions of empathy, and emotional support. In emotionally charged conversations, blinking can serve as a signal of shared emotional processing. For instance, when someone shares something painful or intimate, a listener's slow, deliberate blink may convey understanding, acceptance, or even silent mourning. In this context, blinking becomes part of a compassionate presence, signaling that the listener is emotionally in sync with the speaker. Such moments are rarely analyzed explicitly, yet they shape the texture and emotional tone of human relationships. Like a gentle touch or a soft sigh, a blink can be a gesture of care, a way of saying, "I'm with you," without using words. At a broader level, blinking exemplifies how nonverbal communication operates at the intersection of biology and culture. It is both a physiological necessity and a social signal. We cannot not blink, and yet we blink in ways that reflect our mental states, social norms, and communicative intentions. This dual nature makes blinking especially intriguing. It is both automatic and expressive, both universal and context-dependent. In everyday life, we rely on these blink-mediated cues without consciously interpreting them, trusting our intuitive sense of when someone is engaged, evasive, relaxed, or tense. In professional and cross-cultural settings, however, greater awareness of these patterns can enhance empathy, improve communication, and reduce misunderstanding. Ultimately, blinking reminds us that communication is not only about words. Much of what we convey and understand comes through the body, through rhythm, movement, stillness, and subtle shifts that speak volumes. The blink, in all its quietness, offers a glimpse into the mind's inner workings and the heart's unspoken messages. Whether as a sign of trust, a cue for turn-taking, a reaction to emotional stimuli, or a subtle signal of discomfort, blinking weaves itself into the rich fabric of human connection. It is a gesture both simple and profound, a fleeting moment that reveals the complexity of presence, attention, and interpersonal attunement. Blinking, a reflex so fundamental and automatic that it often escapes conscious notice, plays a vital role in maintaining ocular health, regulating attention, and reflecting emotional and neurological states. However, deviations from typical blink patterns can be indicative of a variety of medical and psychological conditions. Abnormal blink rates or patterns are not merely quirks of behavior. They can be symptoms of underlying disorders ranging from neurological conditions to stress-induced dysfunctions. Exploring these deviations provides critical insight into how tightly interconnected our sensory systems, brain function, and emotional health truly are. A healthy adult typically blinks about 15 to 20 times per minute, although this rate can vary depending on a person's activity, mood, and health status. Blinking serves several essential functions, including lubricating the eye by spreading tear film, removing small debris, and giving the ocular surface periodic rest from visual stimuli. While occasional fluctuations in blink rate are normal, such as increased blinking during conversation or reduced blinking during focused tasks, sustained abnormalities often signal more serious underlying issues. One common category of such abnormalities is involuntary tics, which frequently manifest as excessive or repetitive blinking. Tics are sudden, rapid, recurrent, non-rhythmic motor movements or vocalizations, and eye blinking is one of the most commonly observed motor tics. These are often seen in childhood and can range in severity and frequency. In many cases, blinking tics are benign and transient, especially in younger children. However, when they persist or occur alongside other motor or vocal tics, they may be part of a more complex neuropsychiatric condition, such as Tourette's syndrome. Tourette's is a chronic disorder that typically emerges in childhood and is characterized by multiple motor tics and at least one vocal tic. In such cases, blinking may become intense, exaggerated, and resistant to voluntary control, sometimes leading to social discomfort or functional impairments like difficulty reading or maintaining eye contact. Tourette's syndrome is a multifactorial condition, often involving a combination of genetic predisposition and environmental triggers. Neurobiologically, it is associated with dysregulation in the corticostriato-thalamocortical circuits of the brain, particularly involving dopaminergic neurotransmission. Blinking tics within Tourette's are not simply overactive reflexes, but manifestations of these deeper neurological irregularities. They may increase with stress, fatigue, or excitement and decrease during focused attention, which further complicates both diagnosis and treatment. Therapeutic approaches include behavioral interventions such as habit reversal training and, in some cases, pharmacological treatments aimed at regulating dopamine activity. In contrast to excessive blinking seen in tics and Tourette's, some disorders are marked by significantly reduced blink frequency. One of the most notable examples is Parkinson's disease, a neurodegenerative disorder characterized by motor symptoms such as tremors, rigidity, bradykinesia, slowness of movement, and postural instability. In addition to these hallmark signs, Parkinson's patients often exhibit a strikingly low blink rate, sometimes as few as 1 to 2 blinks per minute. This hypoblinking contributes to the characteristic masked face, or reduced facial expressivity often seen in individuals with Parkinson's. The diminished blinking is not merely a peripheral symptom, but reflects deeper dysfunction in the dopaminergic pathways of the basal ganglia, which play a crucial role in motor control and behavioral initiation. Reduced blinking in Parkinson's has practical consequences beyond its diagnostic utility. It leads to increased ocular surface exposure, predisposing patients to dry eye symptoms such as irritation, burning, and blurred vision. In severe cases, this can compromise visual clarity and contribute to discomfort or secondary infections. Managing these symptoms requires a multifaceted approach, including the use of artificial tears, environmental modifications, and sometimes medications to stimulate tear production. Moreover, blink rate can serve as a valuable, non-invasive biomarker in tracking disease progression or evaluating the efficacy of treatments such as dopaminergic drugs or deep brain stimulation. Another condition closely related to blinking abnormalities is dry eye syndrome, a multifactorial disease of the tears and ocular surface that results in discomfort, visual disturbance, and tear film instability. Ironically, both excessive and insufficient blinking can contribute to or result from dry eye. When blinking is too infrequent, such as during prolonged computer use or concentration-intensive tasks, the tear film does not spread evenly across the eye, leading to desiccation and irritation. Conversely, the discomfort caused by dry eye can lead to reflexive or excessive blinking as the body attempts to compensate. This creates a feedback loop where irritation prompts blinking, which, if ineffective in alleviating symptoms, may exacerbate discomfort and visual fatigue. In modern life, dry eye syndrome is increasingly prevalent due to environmental factors like air conditioning, pollution, and especially screen use. Known as computer vision syndrome or digital eye strain, this condition often involves a marked reduction in blink rate during screen exposure, sometimes as much as a 60% drop. The sustained visual attention required by digital screens, coupled with the tendency to keep the eyes open wider for longer periods, decreases blink frequency and leads to incomplete blinks. Incomplete blinking, where the eyelid does not fully cover the cornea, further reduces the effectiveness of tear distribution and can result in localized dryness and inflammation. Excessive blinking can also be a sign of neurological stress or psychological distress. In certain cases, it may emerge in response to emotional arousal, anxiety, or attempts to suppress other involuntary behaviors. For instance, Individuals with obsessive-compulsive disorder or generalized anxiety disorder might exhibit increased blink rates during episodes of heightened tension or internal conflict. While not as easily categorized as tics, these blinking behaviors often carry an emotional or cognitive load, reflecting the body's effort to self-regulate under stress. Some people may develop functional blinking disorders, where the behavior becomes exaggerated and habitual in the absence of an identifiable structural or neurological cause. These are best understood within the framework of functional neurological symptom disorders, in which psychological stress manifests through physical symptoms. Moreover, trauma and post-traumatic stress can influence blink behavior. Some studies have shown that individuals with PTSD may blink more frequently or erratically in response to perceived threats or triggers. This hypervigilance reflects the body's heightened state of arousal and serves as part of a larger suite of behaviors aimed at scanning the environment and preparing for sudden action. In these cases, blinking is not merely a reflex, but part of the broader stress response system governed by the autonomic nervous system. Therapeutic interventions focused on stress reduction, mindfulness, and behavioral regulation often lead to normalization of these blinking patterns, further supporting their role as indicators of internal psychological states. In children, excessive blinking can sometimes signal more than a benign tic. Pediatricians and neurologists are often consulted when children begin to blink excessively, sometimes coupled with facial grimacing or head movements. While many of these cases resolve on their own, they can occasionally be early signs of more complex neurological or developmental disorders, such as tic disorders or even epileptic activity. In rarer cases, excessive blinking may accompany sensory processing issues in children on the autism spectrum, where heightened sensitivity to light, texture, or environmental stimuli prompts repetitive behaviors as a form of self-regulation. These nuances highlight the importance of comprehensive evaluation, as abnormal blinking can be a presenting symptom for a wide array of conditions. It is also worth noting that some medications can induce changes in blink behavior. Antipsychotic drugs, for instance, can lead to both hypo and hyperkinetic movement disorders that affect the face and eyes, including increased or decreased blinking. Similarly, stimulants used in the treatment of ADHD may influence blink rate by altering dopaminergic and noradrenergic signaling. In such cases, careful monitoring of blink patterns can aid clinicians in fine-tuning dosage or choosing alternative treatments to minimize side effects. In sum, while blinking may appear as a minor, peripheral behavior, deviations from normal blink patterns offer a window into the brain, nervous system, and emotional state of an individual. Abnormal blinking is not merely a cosmetic or superficial issue. It reflects complex interactions between neurological circuits, psychological pressures, and environmental demands. Whether as a symptom of Tourette's, a hallmark of Parkinson's disease, a manifestation of dry eye syndrome, or a response to stress and trauma, altered blinking deserves clinical attention and scientific inquiry. Understanding and interpreting these changes enhances diagnostic accuracy, informs treatment strategies, and deepens our appreciation of the interconnectedness between body and mind. In its rhythm, frequency, and subtle shifts, blinking reveals the silent language of health and disease, a language that, once recognized, can speak volumes. In the modern digital age, the human blink, an ancient reflex that has protected and nourished our eyes for millennia, is being subtly but profoundly altered by our relationship with technology. As screens become central to daily life, whether through computers, smartphones, tablets, or televisions, our natural blinking rhythm is disrupted in ways that can have real physiological consequences. One of the most noticeable and common changes is a marked reduction in blink rate during screen usage. When deeply focused on a digital display, The average person blinks significantly less, sometimes dropping from the typical 15 to 20 blinks per minute to as few as 5 to 7. This reduction has direct implications for eye health and comfort, leading to a condition now widely recognized as digital eye strain or computer vision syndrome. Digital eye strain encompasses a variety of symptoms including dryness, irritation, blurred vision, headaches, and even neck and shoulder pain. The primary contributor from a blinking perspective is the inadequate replenishment of the tear film that coats the surface of the eye. Each blink serves to spread a layer of tears evenly across the cornea, providing essential moisture, clearing away dust or debris, and maintaining optical clarity. When blinking is infrequent or incomplete, as it often is when we stare at screens, the tear film becomes unstable. Areas of the eye may dry out, leading to discomfort and visual disturbances. The situation is compounded by environmental factors such as air-conditioned rooms, low humidity, or improper lighting, which can all exacerbate dryness and fatigue. Beyond the physical discomfort, there is growing concern about the long-term effects of chronic digital exposure on the ocular system. While no conclusive evidence yet links screen time to permanent damage, the cumulative strain of hours spent in front of screens each day may lead to more persistent issues such as dry eye syndrome. Children and adolescents, whose eyes are still developing and who often engage with screens for entertainment, education, and communication, are particularly vulnerable. Their blink rates, too, drop significantly during gaming or video viewing, potentially setting the stage for early onset symptoms of digital eye strain. Preventing or mitigating the effects of reduced blinking during screen time requires a combination of behavioral adjustments and environmental support. One of the most commonly recommended strategies is the 20-20-20 rule. Every 20 minutes, take a 20-second break and look at something 20 feet away. This brief pause not only allows the eye muscles to relax, but also encourages natural blinking, helping to restore moisture to the eyes. Conscious blinking, reminding oneself to blink fully and regularly, can also be effective, especially during long periods of screen use. Some users benefit from setting visual or timed reminders to encourage blinking or to take breaks. The use of artificial tears, particularly preservative-free formulations, offers another layer of support for maintaining eye hydration. Adjusting screen brightness, increasing text size, and optimizing posture and screen position can further reduce strain. Ultimately, the interaction between blinking and technology is a modern example of how human physiology must adapt to cultural and technological change. Recognizing the importance of this simple, unconscious act and taking steps to preserve it can protect our vision, comfort, and productivity in an increasingly screen-centered world. Blinking, though seemingly trivial, reveals itself as a powerful and multifaceted act. It protects our eyes, shapes our perception, reflects our emotions, and even prompts philosophical reflection on consciousness and time. Each blink offers a brief pause, an invisible thread that stitches together our visual and cognitive experience. In exploring its roles across biology, psychology, technology, and philosophy, we discover that blinking is more than a reflex. It is a quiet reminder of life's unnoticed rhythms. By appreciating these subtle gaps, we gain insight into the profound complexity behind even the simplest actions and the rich, layered fabric of human experience.